So there are a number of changes that have occurred in my household as a result of midwifing change that were not anticipated. We recently moved our kids, our little kids, out of a school in the city, and we put them in our local public school. And that happened sort of swiftly and unexpectedly. We moved them to our local public school in Oak Park, and while they were super excited, there was a lot of energy that moved through them in making that change. And you know, the dream state can get highly activated when change is occurring. The dream state can be like on 10 when you're going into change in your life. So my 6-year-old JP is someone who's been reliably a good sleeper. Such has not been the case the last couple weeks. I was resting with him the other night, and as I was kissing his face and loving on him, he said, "I'm just so scared." I said, "What are you scared of?" He said, I'm afraid of the bad guys." And I said, "Well, where are they?" He said, "I'm afraid of the bad guys. They usually are seated over there in that corner." And I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, here's the thing. There is no such thing as bad guys." I said, "There are good people who make decisions that have implications." And he said, "Well, so you're saying there are no bad guys?" I said, "No, there are no bad people on the planet. There are forgetful people on the planet." He said, "Well, if there are no bad guys, then why do stories of bad guys exist? And if there are no bad guys, then why do guns exist?" And I said, "Well, people tell stories. That's what people do. And people tell scary stories, and that creates fear." And I said, "That's one of the reasons, JP, that I don't like you watching TV." And he said, "You don't like me watching TV because it messes with my brain?" And I said, "That is exactly why I don't like you watching TV." And I thought that was like, he got it. He got it that when we perpetuate stories of duality, an us and a them, it actually changes the chemistry of your brain. It messes with your brain. So there was a great yogi by the name of Yogi Bhajan. And today is actually his birthday. He was the founder, the creator of Kundalini Yoga. And he said, "I've come to create teachers, not to gather disciples." And as I sat there, or as I laid there with my son, I was in a moment where I had the opportunity to create a teacher. He had a thought interrupted by a higher state of consciousness. The thought was, bad guys are real. How many of you believe bad guys are real? Most of us believe bad guys are real. And we walk on the planet finding evidence of bad guys. Can you imagine if every being you encountered was a good guy who forgot? And then who you would be in relationship with that person would be altered. If every encounter you had was with a good guy who forgot, you would be participating in a revolutionary act. The easy act is to stay in a dualistic construct, us and them, me and him. This is a community that has existed to create teachers, not gather disciples. And so each of us are here to fine-tune our state of consciousness such that we are available in this moment where a lie is being spewed to interrupt it. You have to prepare for that. So let's talk about the word revolutionary, because this talk title is The Revolutionary Act of Calm. Revolutionary, involving or causing a complete or dramatic change. Calm, not feeling nervousness, anger, or other emotions. Pleasantly free from wind. Now you know I love to feel my feelings. But if I react from my feelings, I am not a midwife of change. If I react from my feelings, I'm in a sleepy state. So the revolutionary act of calm is what these times call for. This entire series has been about bringing discipline to the mind, bringing discipline to the body, going into the high place where you are not hijacked by hysteria. We are in a time where you're easily hijacked. We are in a time where I am easily hijacked. So my intentions for today is that we know what is true, that we have the ability to understand what is true beyond form, what is true beyond circumstance, what is true beyond condition. And my invitation for you is that you break free from the matrix. Do you remember what the matrix was? It was the subduing of humanity. To subdue humanity means to lullaby you to sleep. And any time you are in experience of an us and a them, you, my friend, are in the matrix. So the practice here is to have dominion over your awareness. And I want to talk about how we might do that. The basic premise of this teaching is that you are not your body. You are greater than that which you can see or perceive through your five senses. It's said like this: you are born of spirit and not of matter. You are born of spirit and not of matter. If that is true, then that means you are eternal, you are infinite, you are free, you are powerful. That means that anything you're butting up against, you have the capacity to handle. And in fact, everything out here that appears as a threat is some projection of consciousness that has come up for you to metabolize so that you can become a greater version of yourself. So when 5 years ago, when I moved from a community member here into a staff position, there was a lot of drama at Bodie. And at the time, it was said that the founder of this place, Mark Anthony, was the match, and I was the flame that was gonna burn the ish down. And it was a real time of presence for me. I realized in that moment that if this community was going to withstand the transition that it was in, I had to take 100% responsibility for my mental clarity so that I could be a place and space not to get seduced by the nonsense, the foolishness. And as I've said yes to this next body of work, the same is true. My entire 5 years here, there has been an unraveling in my own psyche of someone against me. Every voice that has ever walked through has gotten really soft, actually. It was loud when I first started, meaning there were lots of complaints and lots of critiques and lots of opinions and lots of feedback. And that was an indication on planet Lola of me outsourcing my approval. The more I take responsibility for my truth, the high ground that I stand on, those voices get softer. That's the practice. The fundamental essence of this teaching is change your thinking, change your life. Change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Change the way you look at things. So this very loud voice came up in my world recently. There was a strong critique, and it required a lot of deep breathing on planet Lola. And the inquiry had to be, Lola, will you be seduced? Will you be seduced by the projection that is before you? Now, if a reactive voice comes up on planet Lola, and my go-to is reactivity, then we are on a ping pong table. So for me, I just got this morning. It's real fresh. I was laying in bed with my husband last night, and I got the reactivity that I have around this reactive voice is the same dualistic construct I'm critiquing. This morning in my meditation practice, what I got was, ooh. See, what happens for me, and some of you know this about me, the voice that comes up is like, I have like an automatic, I'm going to drop an expletive right now, okay? I have an automatic, repeat on planet Lola that's like, get the F out of here. And is always with me. Like, I'm walking on the planet, you do what you do, and I'm like, get the F out of here. And I've told you before, my kids are like, nobody's fighting you. I'm like, that's right. And this morning, what I got was, I could unplug that get the F out of here, and I could flip it and say, come closer. I could flip it and say, come closer, baby. See, there have been a number of people here that have not liked me. But there was one in particular. She really did not like me. And she made it known that she did not like me. And I would walk through our old space, and I'd be like, okay, I can get through this room unscathed. And I got to the point where she was such a great teacher for me, I printed a picture of her and put it on my computer, and I would meditate with her. And I would visualize an infinity loop from my heart to her heart. Because so long as she occurs for me like the other, I am useless to humanity. So imagine the one that seems the most damning before you, you bring them up close and you breathe with them. You meditate with them. You call them into your heart. The premise of the teaching is there's only one of us here. The big lie is that we're separate. That's the big idea with the race conversation. It's a trap. It's a trap. I am a white woman, but that is not the truth of who I am. You are whoever you are, and that is not the truth of who you are. But we have to play the game of operation. It's my favorite one, right? Be careful, because you'll get zapped. Got to go in really mindfully. Do not let your tweezers hit that side. That's what we're doing right now. The process of birth is a natural process, but it requires a high-mindedness to bring it forward. If the practitioner is in a reactive state, they are not of service to the laboring person. If I am in a reactive state, I am not of service to the laboring person before me. So I want to keep us on this inquiry of busting free. Ernest Holmes was a great spiritual philosopher that was largely inspired by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and there were really three ideas that informed his work. One, we are our own spiritual authority. That was the biggest breakthrough I got when I came here. When I took foundations, I developed an affirmation that said, I am my own salvation. That was a game changer for me. I am. That is my spiritual name and nature. I am my own salvation. You are your own spiritual authority. The voices get softer because I realize they're not real. There is a godlike essence in every person. And there is a connection between our thoughts and what happens to us. That is the premise of Ernest Holmes' work. The inquiry that you might involve yourself in with each of these is, we are our own spiritual authority. Well, then, who and where do you look for approval? See, I can be a junkie for you liking me, which is why I get reactive when you don't. But that's the same trap. Imagine we evolved to the point where I loved me so much, it doesn't matter what mess you're talking about over there. There is a godlike essence in every person. The inquiry here might be, what is your practice for seeing good in all people? What is your practice for seeing good in the provocateur before you? My son's nightmare is a provocation for me to have a conversation with a 6-year-old around the idea that bad guys are not real. That is a very big idea, that bad guys are not real. That is a game-changing conversation. Come to your mind's eye and ask yourself the question, what bad guy is the exception to that? Who's the bad guy in your life? He may be on TV. Who is the, no, but this one is really a bad guy. Let me tell you what he did to me. So long as you are seeking evidence, you are in the trap of duality. This community exists to assert unitive consciousness. Unitive consciousness asserts that there's only one of us here, that we are spirit, not form. When we fall asleep and we forget, we think that the material realm is the most real thing going. And the third question, there's a connection between our thoughts and what happens to us. The question there might be, what is your discipline or practice for your mental awareness? What I have learned to do is to surround myself with people who call me out. When I begin to fall asleep, I have a friend who recently told me, you're too emotional. You're not disciplined enough. You indulge your feelings too much because you've been seduced that they're real. Your feelings are not facts. Your feelings are a reaction to a stimulus outside of yourself. They're not bad, they're not wrong, they're not going away, but they're not the truth of who you are. So I breathe. Let's look at it like this. Happiness is not very good for the economy. If we were happy with what we had, why would we need more? Now, how do you sell an anti-aging moisturizer? You make someone worry about aging. How do you get people to vote for a political party? You make them worry about immigration. How do you get them to buy insurance? By making them worry about missing out. How do you get them to buy a new smartphone? By making them feel like they're being left behind. To be calm becomes a kind of revolutionary act. To be happy with your own non-upgraded existence. To be comfortable with our messy human selves would not be good for business. you run the risk of getting played. When you are living in a dualistic construct where the source of your safety, security, approval, and control is outside of yourself, you're getting played. That is not to say that I cannot love my shell-toe Adidas. But if I think they are the source of my happiness, I'm trapped. In the same way that if I think someone is the source of my pain, I am trapped. When someone or something, when the locus of control is outside of you, you're outside of your practice. And that's okay. That happens. It's an opportunity and an invitation to bring it back. So, my husband was telling me that yesterday, my 9-year-old daughter, now look, let me make a request before I tell you this story. Because sometimes I share these stories, and then you walk up to my family afterwards, and they don't think it's very funny. So if I'm going to tell you a story, just honor the safe space in which the story is being told. They've already given me permission to tell the story. Don't make it worse by going up to them. Poor Nathan has like men coming up to him like, oh man. I'm like, leave him alone. Leave him alone. So Nathan was at the soccer field yesterday with our 9-year-old, Caroline, and my brother, and my niece and nephew. And at the end of the game, the last team has to deconstruct the soccer stuff. You have to take the net down. It was hot, it was steamy, it was not fun, and the kids wanted to get to an already scheduled carnival. So Caroline, our 9-year-old, saw the coach from the opposing team approaching, to which she said, "Sir, would you be willing to take this down for us since you lost?" I was like, wow. Wow. And my husband and I agreed that if some child had said that to my brother or me, given the way we're wired, there would have been a very different response. The revolutionary act of calm would not have been activated. But this man just took a breath, and he didn't allow himself to get triggered by a 9-year-old. That's a small example of what we see occurring on the planet right now. Sir, would you be willing to take this down for us? I mean, since you lost. I was like, damn. I was like, ooh. I thought that was hysterical. To be totally honest, I thought that was hysterical. And I can just imagine Caroline saying it like stone cold, like, what's the problem? That makes perfect sense to me. The revolutionary act of calm, the ability to weather the wind, the ability to navigate the choppy waters, and to maintain your center. That is what a midwife does. A midwife navigates the labor pains and holds the high watch. Ernest Holmes went on to say, the greatest good that can come to anyone is the forming within him of an absolute certainty of himself and of his relationship to the universe, forever removing the sense of heaven as being outside himself. My 6-year-old said to me this week, he said something like, when I die, I will go to heaven. I was like, who told you that? That is not true. Heaven is here now. And he was like, no, it's not. It's up there. And I was like, no, it is not. It is not a geography. I am your mother. Heaven is where you are now. Don't indoctrinate my children. The greatest good that can come to anyone is the forming within him of an absolute certainty of himself and of his relationship to the universe, forever removing the sense of heaven as being outside himself. There is no better place to be than where you are right now. There can never come a time when we shall stop progressing, that age is an illusion, that limitation is a mistake, that unhappiness is ignorance. This understanding will rob man of his loneliness and give him a sense of security which knows no fear, a peace without which no life can be happy. You are here to be a midwife of change. You are here to be someone that holds the high watch in the dark hours of labor. The discipline is to do your work, to prioritize your mental clarity. I took my friend's word. I'm too emotional. You're letting this person knock you off your square. And I was like, you're right. This conversation was sort of taking me out. And if you remember last week when Lauren Ash was here, she talked about organizing her life so that her highest expression can come forward. I had one glass of wine on Thursday night. I had one glass of wine on Friday night, and I felt it. I didn't have the capacity to a revolutionary act of calm. I was at the effect, my emotional state was at the effect of that which I had put in me. One glass of wine. I'm not telling you don't have your glass of wine. I'm just saying if you're in the final 3 centimeters of birthing the vision of your heart and of your soul, keep your space clean, keep it tight, and stay focused. Because one little thing like that will knock you out. The game that I am up to on the planet, and there's a game that you are up to on the planet because this is a community of teachers, not disciples. The game that I am up to on the planet is to alter the consciousness of humanity, to deconstruct the lie of separation. And I have to always ask myself, what is subduing my life force energy? What is dampening me and distracting me from the highest and holiest vision coming to form? Where do you get off? Where do you distract you? Where do you anesthetize you? And how do you keep your center? What the planet needs right now is a revolutionary act of calm. It does not need more hysteria. Anyone can be hysterical. Very few are willing to do the work that calls forward calm in the wind.